Amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, political instability is a reality faced by some Southeast Asian nations. Thailand is one of them, with hundreds taking to the streets daily to demand Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-ocha to resign.
And this morning, we're going to discuss the country's current political situation with Dr. Punchada Sirivunnabood, who is an associate professor at Mahidol University's Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanity. She's also a visiting fellow at ICEA's Yusof Ishak Institute, a leading research center dedicated to the study of socio-political, security, economic trends, and developments here in Southeast Asia. Her research interests include comparative politics, party development, and Southeast Asian studies. Good morning, Punchada. Thank you for joining us on the C Morning Show. How are you?
Morning.
Good morning from Bangkok.
Oh, I'm from Bangkok, correct. Now, can you explain a little bit about the current political crises there, and have there been signs of improvement following the reopening of tourism last week?
Well, it's very getting worse because, right now a lot of our young generations, still protest. And now it's not really, just protest on the street, but they have conduct a lot of violence every day.
Wow.
So it doesn't seem to be better at this point, except, we need the government to do something, maybe negotiation with the young generations, or maybe, trying to issue any policy to make the compromisation with the young generation.
Got it. So earlier this month, Prayuth prevailed by a comfortable margin in the House of Representatives. With support from 264 lawmakers, showing only a few defections from the 271 members of his ruling coalition. How can we describe the current political makeup in the parliament?
Well, actually, he passed or he survived the no emotion debate. But if you look at the score, he got the least score compared to another 4 ministers, which has got higher to support from the parliament. This is kind of signal that there's some conflict within the government and also the conflict within the coalition government. So I think at this time, the situation within the government is not that good, and also about last week, Prime Minister just signed a letter to make one of the ministers to like a kick out of the minister in his cabinet. So now it's more conflict within the coalition government and also the government party itself too.
The way I see it, Punchada, is perhaps when we look at the general public, the citizens of Thailand, basically we see a lot of the protests, as you mentioned, coming from the younger generation, the younger citizens, if you will. Yet there is still some support, and I assume that's coming from the previous generation for the Prime Minister. Now, what are some of the factors behind the support for Prayuth Chan-ocha within the House of Representatives?
Well, because there are, a lot of the government party that has a lot of MP. So then most of the MP and also, the member of the coalition party still support him because they still want the government to survive. So then that's why, he can survive this no emotion debate. No motion debate. So then that's why he continued to be in power for the next 6 or maybe 7 months. But I'm quite sure that the next election will come to Thailand quite soon before the end of the 4-year terms of the Prime Minister.
Got it. So on that note, Thai media recently are abuzz with rumors that the Secretary General of the ruling military-backed Palang Pracharat party is leading the effort to unseat him and pull the main opposition Pheu Thai party into the coalition. What is your take on that?
Well, this is very clear that there's a conflict within the government party, and especially within Palang Pracharat, because the Secretary General Kamanat Pokpal, he actually just got to be promoted to this position just the beginning of this year, and he talked to the media that the Prime Minister sort of ignored the MP and politicians within the parties because when Prayuth came into power, he did not really become the member of the party, so then he did not really go along or get the support or work together with the MP. So then that's why the Secretary General that he feel that there is a distance between the MP in the parties and also the Prime Minister. So then he feel like the Prime Minister did not really, taking care or, pay more consideration to the MP. So then that's why he feel like he tried to find a vote, to get the Prime Minister to resign. So this is very clear that there's an internal conflict within the party. So I think now the Secretary General, he is no longer the minister,
Right.
and I think in the near future maybe he consider to leave the party or set up a new party or join other political party.
Right. And I assumed by him winning the no confidence vote that was put forward by the opposition would be a sign that he would remain in power until 2024. But you earlier mentioned that he would be in power for at least the next 6 or 7 months. What would it take to have Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-ocha unseated over the next half year?
Well, there's a lot of political conflict in Thailand, not only within the parliament, but also on the street. The protests, are going every day, and also the failures of the government to handle the COVID-19, and a lot of Thais, they are not happy on it, on the government's policy on the vaccines or to how to handle the COVID-19. So then I think this is maybe, for you to feel like to maintain the power or, to still win in the next election, maybe he dissolved the parliament before the end of the 4-year terms. And one signals that very important to show that the next election might be happen soon because the government party is already amend the constitutions on the electoral system. So then when they already get the new system, I think, partly they may be ready for the next election.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate when we have to see images of the protests that are still ongoing and have been ongoing for quite some time. Do you think that will finally come to an end if the Prime Minister does step down or has to step down?
Well, it would be end if the Prime Minister stepped down because the young generations, when they protest, they offer 3 demands. The first one is the resignation of the Prime Minister.
Right.
The second one is the constitutional amendment. And the last one is the government supposed to stop intimidating people. And later, even though the protests go further to the reform of the monarchy, but right now the last demand sort of disappeared. So then most of the protests, especially the young generation, they sort of focus on the resignations of the Prime Minister.
Right.
Got it. So Prayuth is actually not the first Prime Minister to face coup attempts, right? I think it started in 2007. In your opinion, what is the root of Thailand's long political instability?
Well, I think it's the fighting between the royalists and the Democrats, the Democratic group. So then the way that protests happened during Thaksin era and also Prayuth era is different group of people. So now the protesters are more like pro-democratic group, and the other in the past is like they are pro-military group, something like that. So then the problem of Thai politics at this time, I think it's a conflict between the idea of democracy and also the idea on to protest against the military to control the power in Thai politics. So at this time, I think it's kind of be difficult to be solved and Thailand to become more compromised. So we have to see the next election how the government going to handle the politics, the electoral result will be give more chance for the opposition party or the pro-democratic party to be in part of the government.
And speaking of elections, in your opinion, do you think it would be better if a 2-ballot system were to be used in the next elections?
Well, in my opinion, I think it's better than the single ballot election like in 2019 because the voters or people can separate one ballot to vote for the politicians and another ballot to vote for the party. So then the way they calculate the seat is separate between the ballot for the party and the ballot for the MP or politician. So it's made clearer for the Thai politics. How many people love this party, how many people love the politician. So the
Right.
last electoral system kind of confused.
Yeah, I guess it would be the same thing as to say, you would be forced to vote for somebody you didn't want to vote for
Yeah.
just because you're actually supporting the party.
Exactly. And do you think constitutional amendments can be served as a solution?
Oh, at this time, we only amend the electoral system. Actually, the electoral system is not the main point that the protester wants. They want, the amendment on the 250 Senate to be, get out, to be deleted from the constitution, something like that. So far, the amendment only on the electoral system, I don't think that it's going to solve any political crisis in Thailand.
All right, we've now seen that several actually, cabinet members have been forced to resign. Does this mean there might possibly be a reshuffle soon?
Well, so far, the Prime Minister said that there won't be any reshuffle because, he want to wait and see the situation in the coalition party first. So now I don't think in the next couple months there will be a reshuffle, but after October, I think it's maybe a more possibility to cabinet reshuffle.
Got it. So recently, more and more reports of oppressive actions against protesters. And with that in mind, how would you rate the democracy under Prayuth? And, we have been talking about several things, but what solution can you suggest, in your opinion?
Well, first thing, the government needs to listen to the protester, especially the young generations, because the young generation is the future of the country. But so far, it seems that the government ignored the demands of the student or the young generations. So the talk or the negotiations, or at least adopt any kind of a possible solutions according to the demand from the young generation maybe is the situation in Thailand. But now the government seems to do nothing, trying to facilitate any demand from the young generation or the protester.
Right, and it's not just Thailand. We're seeing this happen in Malaysia as well as neighboring Myanmar. They're going through their own political crises as well. How does that impact Thailand's domestic politics, if at all?
Well, I don't think it's impact the domestic politics at this time because, according to ASEAN, we have, concept that no interventions on any internal affairs of the member countries.
Right.
So then I don't think that any political conflict within other ASEAN countries would affect any the politics in Thailand.
Now, curious about how the government is actually handling COVID-19 and vaccination amid the never-ending protests. How is it going so far in Thailand?
Well, today we have numbers of cases reducing because we have a really long shutdown, almost 2 months. But if you look at the problem at this time, the vaccine is still in problem because a lot of people, especially the the old generations, they don't get the vaccine. So I believe that if we can get the vaccine, more than like 60%, the situation would be better. But now, for me, I think it's better for Kaal this week. But this morning, one of the doctor who is also the consultant with the Prime Minister, he said that if the government did not issue any policy to control at this time, next month the cases in Thailand might be increased. So first thing, the government have to handle the vaccine better and trying to get the vaccine to everyone, especially the older generation.
Indeed, that's surprising to me because considering it's the older generation that are at higher risk, at the higher risk group with the elderly and everything. So, Punchada, thank you so much for your time and this in-depth discussion looking inside Thailand's political situation at this time. We do hope that this dire situation does improve sooner than later, and we really do appreciate you talking to us at this time. Have yourself a great day, stay healthy, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Punchada. Have a great day.